welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and I'm here today to show you part 1 of my 2021 TBR.
Oh hi, thanks for checking in. I'm still a piece of garbage.
So I decided for 2021, if you didn't watch this video, I made a TBR card, which I will link up above. So this is part 1 to tell you about all the books I want to read in 2021. So as this is part 1, we'll start with the first books, the classic books. I want to read at least one classic per month. So far, I have 10 classics here that I want to immediately read, and we'll get right into them. So we'll start off with the first one, which will be a reread for me, and that is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I read this probably in secondary 4, which is grade 10, which is like 16. So I guess I read this for my English class when I was 16 years old, and I absolutely adored this story. I think part of this comes with the movie that had Gary Sinise in it, and at the time I was obsessed with CSI New York. So obviously I loved the movie, and I think it's one of the very few movies that have made me cry. So that could be the main reason I have such a strong attachment to the book. So that's why I do want to give it a reread. It's quite short. I have trouble getting into classic language. I read a lot of classic books for school, and that's part of why this project is really important. I read a lot of classics for school, and I associate classics with reading them for school. I find them much harder, or at least I did find them much harder when I was in school, to read them for fun. So now I'm hoping that with this project, I will learn to love them. And so I want to start off the year. I'll probably start off the year with Of Mice and Men. It's relatively short. The language is quite accessible. It was written in 1937, so definitely itching to reread this, see how I feel. Hopefully I still enjoy it to this day. This book is about two men named George and Lenny. They are laborers in California's dusty vegetable fields, and they work basically their asses off because they have one dream, and that's to own acres of land with a home that they can call their own and live in it together. Once they start working at this specific ranch, their goal is relatively within reach until something goes wrong involving Lenny. So one of my friends actually gifted me this book, so I'm very excited to read this in January. If you watch my December TBR, you know that one of the classics I want to read is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and one of the books I have planned for 2021 is A Tale of Two Cities. So I don't know much about A Tale of Two Cities, despite it being probably a relatively well-known classic. I didn't read this for school. From what I understand, this book is set in both Paris and London surrounding the time of the French Revolution. It follows a girl named Lucy and her father Alexander as they are kind of held captive in the Bastille prison for 18 years. Oh no, Alexander is held captive. That's it, because when he's released, his family find themselves caught in the lives of a French aristocrat and an English lawyer who compete for the love of Lucy. That's it. I think I've heard that this is one of Charles Dickens' best novels, or at least his most well-read. All I know about Charles Dickens as a writer, he wrote his novels in a serialized format, and so he was adding words in order to make a better pay. So that kind of worries me, but I'm excited to read this nonetheless. Then one of the books I had growing up because of my mom was A Portrait of a Young... What is this? A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. I have no idea what this book is about, just that I saw it in my house for my entire youth. From what I understand, this seems to be James Joyce's semi-autobiographical novel, and it's a coming-of-age story told in 19th century Ireland, and this follows the main character's search for artistic freedom despite a heavily conservative and religious family and upbringing and society. I know that this one is pretty revered as well, so looking forward to reading this and seeing what it's about. Then in the middle of my English degree, I got super into the idea of being obsessed with Ernest Hemingway. I don't know why. I never read any Ernest Hemingway. I just thought that he would be a writer that I would come to like, and I bought one of his books, A Farewell to Arms. Can I tell you what it's about? No. So this is a classic exploration of love and war, and it tells the story of a man named Frederick Henry. And from what I understand, Henry, he is a lieutenant serving in Italy in World War I, and that's it. So excited to see what this one is about. Then I also want to pick up The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I figured a lot of these classic writers that I have here are white cis men. Why don't we throw in a woman in there, spice things up? So this is probably the one I've heard of the most, and I did read maybe like 10 pages of this sometime this year. So I know that this is also semi-autobiographical, and it follows a character that heavily is inspired by Sylvia Plath herself. Esther Greenwood is an aspiring poet living in New York, and she has everything going for her, it seems, except for this cloud of mental illness that surrounds her. She is able to get an internship at a major magazine in New York, but around the same time, she is heavily struggling with depression and is sent to see a therapist. I have heard nothing but good things about The Bell Jar, so excited to give this one a go. I feel like it will be really impactful for me. So because Blade Runner, I have a point to this. Because Blade Runner is one of my favorite movies, I decided that I also wanted Philip K. Dick to be one of my favorite authors. So I have read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and The Man in the High Castle from him, and did enjoy both of those books. I really like what Philip K. Dick has to say about society. So I want to read another book by him, which is a random book that I picked up from Indigo, and it's Counterclock World. This one has a kind of interesting premise. So basically in this world, everything is working counterclockwise, opposite to what we are accustomed to now. So time is kind of moving backward. So by that, people greet each other with goodbye, and people rise from the dead. And one of the people rising back from the dead is a famous prophet named Anarch Peak, and a lot of people start to go on the hunt to find him first, and these groups will do whatever it takes to put this man back in the grave. So that sounds super ominous, and very looking forward to reading this because I completely forgot what it's about, and now suddenly I am extremely interested. One of my favorite classic writers is Oscar Wilde, and I have read The Portrait of Dorian Gray many a times in both my education and for pleasure. It's one of my favorite books of all time, and this year I wanted to try another one of his work. So this is The Importance of Being Earnest. This is arguably one of Oscar Wilde's most famous plays and truly represented the climax of his career. The back of this doesn't really provide any insight as to the plot of this play, but it was first performed in 1895, and it is a play full of mix-ups, unexpected plot twists, mistaken identities, and extraordinary quick-fire wit. This collection also contains two other works by Oscar Wilde, which was Lady Windermere's Fan and An Ideal Husband, which are two brilliant comedies offering social commentary on Victorian manners and morals. So this book will give me 3 plays by Oscar Wilde, and I'm very excited to give this a go. As I mentioned previously in the video, I wanted to read Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, and the reason I wanted to reread that book is because I have had East of Eden by John Steinbeck on my TBR for probably forever. This is one of the classics I've been meaning to get to the most. This is a book that is a reflection of the book of Genesis from the Bible. It is once again set in a California valley, and it basically goes over the descendants of 2 rivaling families, kind of like the descendants of Adam and Eve, and reflects the story primarily of Cain and Abel. So I'm very excited to give this one a go. It's quite chunky, but it is a book I've been looking forward to reading for a really long time, so I really hope I enjoy it. Then for probably the oldest classic on this list, I really want to read The Odyssey by Homer. I don't know why. Just around this time in 2019, I bought The Odyssey and the Iliad because I had this insane need to read Greek literature. I only studied Greek literature one time, one semester in college, and surprisingly we never read this, so that's partially the reason I want to get to it. I feel like it's a necessity. All I know about this is a book that follows Odysseus and his eventful voyage home from the Trojan War. I know there are cyclopses in this, Poseidon, storms, witches. I also am planning on reading this alongside Margaret Atwood's The Penelopiad, which offers Penelope's, which is Odysseus's wife, which offers her side of things from the Odyssey. So need to pick this up soon. And lastly, the last classic I would like to get to in 2021 is Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. One of my friends gifted me this beautiful, gorgeous copy of it, so thank you very much. I don't know much about Huckleberry Finn. I know that when I said I never read it, This friend in particular was like, you have to, it's one of my favorites. So alas, here we are. I literally don't know anything about this book, just that it follows a young boy named Huckleberry Finn and his adventures, and I'm hoping to figure it out as I read this book. It's also quite chunky, but hopefully because it follows a kid and his adventures, it will be quite fun to read. And that's it. Those are all the classics I'm planning on reading in 2021. For my next video in this series, I will speak about all the non-fictions I want to read in 2021, so keep an eye out for that video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell if you want to see more content from me. It will make me very happy. Comment down below if you hate any of these books, if you really like any of these books, if you think I'll like one book more than another book. Let me know. Argue with me down below in the comments because I love to debate and I don't know how to end these things, so I will see you next time. Bye!